Hello, I'm Sharon Ross with the Capital City Arts Initiative based in Carson City, Nevada. We're at the Courthouse Gallery with Michael Plyler to ask Michael to talk about his show, The Maya of Guatemala and Western Landscapes. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this.
Well, this is great. So tell us about the Maya of Guatemala and your connection and how long, where did it come from?
So in 1980, I was working as a Clark County fireman, but I'd already started pursuing my photography, and I got a 5-week vacation on the county's dime, and I went to the Mexican Yucatan for 4 weeks. And at the end of that stay, I went a week into Guatemala. And after about 3 days in Guatemala, I wished that I had reversed it and spent 4 weeks there and only a week on the beach in the Yucatan. So in '82, I went back, but at the end of that trip in '80, just before I left, I ran into a guy from college that I hadn't seen in 4 years. He was a Peace Corps worker, and he just got to Guatemala, and he'd been there about 2 weeks, and I spied him walking down the street, called out his name, and sure enough, it was my friend Joe. And he said, well, come back and you can stay with me and I'll take you around the country and show you around. So I went back in '82, I stayed with Joe, and he took me to the Petén, which is where Tikal, the great Mayan ancient city, is, which is now a national park. And so when I went back in '82, I spent all my time in Guatemala and I just became hooked. And every vacation from the fire department, I went back to Guatemala and made photographs.
Michael, tell us about the photographic equipment that you use. You took these photographs long before the iPhone was invented.
You can take photographs with an iPhone? Yeah, so when my first trip in '80, I was using 35mm roll film. When I went back in '82, I had a medium format camera. And I had the medium format camera in '82, in '83, and then in '84. I also started using a large format camera, which is not ideal for portrait work, but it was for a lot of the other stuff. So all of the stuff in this show is either medium format or large format. So it meant if I was carrying the medium format and the large format, I was schlepping about 50, 55 pounds of stuff besides my clothes and toothbrush and all that stuff.
Michael, you were in Guatemala during the Civil War, but none of that conflict is reflected in these images. Why not?
Well, there were plenty of other guys making photographs of the war, so I felt that I didn't need to tread on their ground. And my interest was showing these people in their day-to-day life and hopefully create empathy for them. So I was interested more in their essence of who they were than their negative situation with regards to the war.
Talk about Wallace Stegner's quote, deeply lived in places with the Maya and Lolas Neighborhood.
So Lola was a lady I met in this village, Todos Santos, which is high up in the Cuchumatanes Mountains. in the state of Huehuetenango, in the department of Huehuetenango, which are comparable to our states. And that borders on to Mexico. And the main town in the department of Huehuetenango is the city of Huehuetenango. But Todos Santos is 25 miles, about 40 kilometers from Huehue. And when you take a car there, it takes 3 hours to traverse the 25 kilometers. So you're going about 20 or 25 miles, so you're going about 8 miles an hour trying to get there. So Lola was a lady I met on the street, and she was trying to sell me weavings, trying to make a living. And I followed her back to her house, and this is her neighborhood, and I saw this spot, and I went back the next day and set up the 4x5 for this one and waited for somebody to walk down the trail between these two houses. These two houses are fairly typical of this person's sort of middle class for Mayan, because they actually have a tile roof as opposed to either lamina, metal, sheet metal, laminated, or thatched. So a thatched roof person would be on the lower end of the economic spectrum. And then a metal roof would be next, and then tile roof, these people they're doing good. They can afford to buy tiles to put on their roof.
All your images are in black and white. What does black and white tell the viewer about your work and your vision and the future of black and white photography?
So I did actually start out doing color photography, but somewhere along the way there was this guy named Ansel Adams whose work I really liked, and I thought I'd give that a shot. So I did teach myself his zone system, and the difference is there was a guy named Peter Adams who's a photo educator, and he said, color is a great aid to showing you what things look like and giving you a general appearance, whereas black and white gets more to their essence. And I think black and white, to execute a really good photograph in black and white is extremely more difficult than in color, simply because people relate to color and they get oohed and awed by the color. When you look at color nature photography, people look at that and they're like, oh, it's so beautiful and I want to go there. But to really make a nice black and white landscape, for example, that's a whole separate deal. To get them to respond to that photograph once you dial out the color is a challenge.
Michael, talk about the pieces that you have that are a series within the frame, a sequence.
So in 1985, I was traveling through Europe, and I went into the main train station in Barcelona. I wanted to make a quintessential train photograph. So I set up on this platform, and I took a negative of people milling about, waiting for the train. Then that train came in, and they're very long time exposures, like 20, 30 seconds. So the people were milling into the train, and you got that trail, that ghostly thing. And then the train left, and then I took a picture of a blank platform, no people, no train. Well, when I got back home and I developed all the film, and I looked at the contact sheets, I went, hey, boom, 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 there's a sequence here. People are waiting, the train comes in, the train leaves. And I didn't plan it that way, but it worked out. And so then I started looking for that. But I have some where I set stuff up, but the best ones are the ones that I walk into a situation. So I walked into this church in Nebach. Again, this is in the Achille Triangle, where the war was a lively event on any given day. So this painting up on the wall of this church, this is a painting of a massacre where the soldiers came in and killed a bunch of Mayan folks. And this little side altar is where people come and offer prayers to loved ones who have died. So I set up the first shot, and I was because I knew this painting was of the war and all that stuff. And this is a little table where they come and they put the candle, and this woman walked in while I was sitting there, and I went, oh, here comes another triptych. And so she came in from over here, and this is like a 2 or 3 second exposure. She already had the candle lit, so she comes in with the lit candle in her hand, kneels down, puts it on the table, leaves the candles behind, and leaves the frame. So she's not there, she brings the candles, says her prayer, and then leaves the candle burning in the memory of her loved one. And this is a hand-pulled Ferris wheel. This is in Chichicastenango, one of my favorite places to make photographs. A lot of photographs in this show are from Chichi, and there's still others that aren't here. But I was fortunate, I saw this, I was so amazed by this hand-pulled, man-powered Ferris wheel. And fortunately, Mayans are not very tall, so I set the view camera way up here, and I was on my tippy toes, framing everything up. And I was able to get above the heads of the crowd. And again, so, you know, a lot of motion, it's slowing down, and then it comes to a full stop. So this is a meditation on motion sequentially.
You're standing next to an intriguing image, Mojave Stonehenge. Tell me.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites, and so this was again in the Mojave Preserve. Thank you, President Obama, if I have that part correct. So I saw this photograph, and I took it with a sort of long lens because I wanted it to be flat instead of a long running foreground. And when you're working in the desert, the light is so harsh if there's no clouds that I'll go out in the desert for days and not make a photograph because the light's just not very conducive. But driving in that day, this was my first day, and I could see the clouds building up, and I thought, woohoo, I'm gonna hit the jackpot today. So I made this photograph, and so I set everything up, closed down the lens, and I reached for a film holder. And when I put the film holder in and pulled the dark slide, I noticed that the light had softened up, that the wispy clouds had moved slightly in front of the sun at the end of the day. And so I actually thought, oh, this is even better. So it turned out, I knew it was going to be slightly less contrasty, so I overdeveloped it and then printed it on a softer paper so I could get this really ethereal glow out of it. I think it worked out pretty good. And this was made on a box of paper that I had in the refrigerator for about 30 years and had never used. And I thought, I'm going to try printing it on this today because I'm running out of paper, and it's gorgeous. I made it on another paper, and I don't like it as well as I like this one.
So we're back in the Western landscape, Western U.S.,
right,
with black and white landscape photography. So tell us more.
Well, I've been I started out doing landscape photographs. When I was still doing color work, I had a little 35mm Olympus OM1, and I would take it on all my backpacking trips, as all of us young hippies in the 70s would do. And when I finally decided to start going black and white, the first thing I did was I wanted a bigger negative. So that's why I first went to the medium format camera, and then eventually a 4x5, which is the old wooden camera with the bellows and the dark cloth and all that fun stuff. And the beauty of using a 4x5 view camera is you can, especially when you're doing the zone system work, you can treat each negative individually in terms of its development and the contrast in a given scene, and by varying your development times and your developer dilutions, you can control the contrast of a given negative. And so you have these film holders that have a piece of film on both sides, and each film holder is numbered, so you can take notes and write down, okay, holder number 1, normal development, holder number 2, +1, which is an increasing contrast development, or -1, less contrast in the development, so that you end up with an optimal negative when you start printing. Over the course of, 45 years since I've been making black and whites, my favorite paper, which was Oriental, I used it for 30 years. It was the most consistent paper I've ever used in terms of you could run out of one box, open a new box right in the middle of printing a negative and never have to change anything, exposure time, development time. It was so beautifully consistent. Well, Oriental stopped making that, and then I went through 2 other paper types which are also gone now, not being manufactured. So the future for me is kind of grim, and I'm not interested in making computer-generated prints. So I'm at a crossroads.
So tell us about the future of photography and the paper issue.
Well, because all those papers went away, it's pretty grim when I look out there. And so I'm kind of at a juncture where I'm not sure which way I'm going to go. I know I don't want to do computer printing because it doesn't interest me. And people who do digital think I'm silly because I'm an old dinosaur using a wet darkroom and smelling fumes and wandering around in the dark, but I can look at a digital print and an analog print, and I can pick the digital print every time. And and I'm not saying it's necessarily inferior, it just has a different look, and this is the look of work as I prefer it. So I don't know what's going to happen because there's really only 1 or 2 papers left, and I'd have to start all over and learn new papers. And one of the papers isn't ideal to work with in tandem with my enlarger. So I'm going to have to get back to you on this searing question overall.
As part of the exhibition, CCAI commissioned Logan Hebner to write an essay, right here, about the exhibition. He interviewed Michael. The essay is printed. You can get a copy in the gallery or see it online on our website. 56 of Michael's pieces have been accepted into the permanent collection.
At the National Museum of the American Indian at the Smithsonian.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And as a companion piece to this exhibition, Michael is going to do a Nevada Neighbors Talk, the Highland Maya of Guatemala, and it will be up on our YouTube channel soon, so watch for that. Michael, thank you very much for sharing your art with CCAI, with the courthouse, and with Carson City.
Thanks for letting me share it.
Follow CCAI on our website, which is ccainv.org. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we have 4 galleries in Carson City. We have this at the courthouse, we have one at Western Nevada College in their Bristlecone Gallery, we have our student gallery in the Brick, and the Kroll Boardroom. So each place has plenty of parking. So you'll find lots of activity on our YouTube channel, and the following slide will show our generous funders that keep us moving forward. Thank you.